Already started.
Hi, everybody. I think we've got enough people here to start. This is one of our many meetings on Seagate and the neighborhood to be built across the street. If you've gone to other ones and you have some questions you were afraid to ask, this is the place to ask them. We've got here Alexis Crespo from RVI. She knows everything there is about building something, permits throughout Lee County and Bonita Springs. She'll talk to us about whatever questions we have. She'll give you a little overview just in case you've missed earlier meetings, and I'm going to hand it over to her. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Give me a second. Of course, the slides aren't advancing now that we're going live, so give me one moment. Should do it. All right, so just make sure. Oh, perfect. All afternoon. Thank you very much for coming and spending a bit of time with us. Again, my name is Alexis Crespo. I'm Vice President of Planning with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. My office is just behind the Publix down on Bonita Grand Drive. It says the Waldrop Center outside. So if you want to meet after today, I'm nearby. Joining me today, we have Matt Price, who is the owner of the subject property we're referring to as Rivanna Lakes. He is one of the principals and owners of Seagate Development. And so he's on Zoom and able to answer questions as they may come up. We also have Neil Montgomery here on the front row, who's legal counsel, a land use attorney for the project, and Yuri Baikau, who is a traffic engineer and performed the traffic studies. So we are, again, pleased to be here today to give you a brief summary of the project. We don't want to take all the airtime here and go through things you've already heard, but we did want to run through it briefly. And then, of course, open the floor to your questions. We have 39 people on Zoom, so that's a pretty good turnout between Zoom and this room. We're probably over 80 altogether. So that's a good turnout. So what we'll do so folks can hear is we'll have to repeat questions from this audience into the mic so the Zoom folks can hear. So it'll be a little bit clunky, but we'll get through it as we did at the fire station. Show of hands, who went to the meeting at the fire station? Okay. And then show of hands, who attended our virtual only meeting on June 19th? Okay, so there's some folks who this is their first real look at this project. It seems like maybe even half the room. So that's helpful to us. And I'm glad we do have some slides then to walk you through. So the subject property is shown on the screen. It's outlined in yellow. You'll see it's got some vegetation on it as well as some large lakes. This project is directly across the street from your beautiful community, Palmyra. As you can see labeled on the map, we're on the north side of Bonita Beach Road. We have over a mile of frontage, and this property is overall 204 acres in size. This is just taking a little bit of a closer look at the property. You can see the main entrances to your community there on the south side of the street. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see your main entry to the golf course in the community, and then what I'll refer to as the San Remo entry or the Mattioti view access point is over to the right-hand side of the screen. So this is just a little bit of information about this subject property. It's again 204 acres in size. 114 acres of this property is within the city of Bonita Springs. The balance of 90 acres is within unincorporated Lee County. So we are straddling two separate governmental jurisdictions. If your project is within the city of Bonita Springs, you file applications with the city. They have their own planning department. They have their own city council, which you of course elect. And there's a very specific land development code, comprehensive plan, and a whole set of process and procedures unique, specific to the city of Bonita Springs, which left Lee County, I believe, the late 90s to start their own city. They were not, entirely pleased with all the decisions of the Lee County Board at the time and was able to incorporate as their own city, and over time created their own codes, hired their own staff, and of course continue to make decisions on land use matters. The same is true for our 90 acres that are in Lee County. Those lands are controlled by the Lee County Land Development Code, the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and then ultimately any zoning actions or land use decisions are made by the Board of County Commissioners, which you also participate in those elections. But they are elected county-wide and represent a much larger area than just the city. The site is accessed directly from Bonita Beach Road, which is an arterial roadway. So that's really the largest type of roadway we have when we look at roadway infrastructure. So it's a significant road. It services a great number of developments, as you all know from driving on it every day. And so that road is also maintained by Lee County, owned and maintained by Lee County. It's very much in the city, serves city residents, but the ownership of the road and who maintains it and makes decisions about improving it is largely the Lee County Department of Transportation. So a lot of different kind of moving parts here. Another key aspect of the property is what you'll notice, those large dark areas on the site. Those are historical mining areas that occurred on the property. The largest, kind of in the center top of the property, up against the Kiel Canal, that is a mine that is approved in the late 80s, I believe, and has ceased to be mined any longer. There's no active permits allowing that area to be mined. It's really, they dug out all the dirt that they were going to get out of that, and that stopped many, many years ago. You can see a small lake to the east of that as you move to the east side of the property. That is a mine known as the Plamosa mine. That is within our portion of the project in Lee County, and that does have active industrial zoning that permits mining on that portion of the property. And it's been about, I would say, 30% mined out. So there's about 60% of that mine is still available to be excavated under Lee County's rules and regulations, as theirs permits mining, whereas the city's does not. And something important to note, this is pretty unique, and it's made a lot of these conversations, and at least for me, easier, in that Matt Price and his company owns this property. A lot of times developers put properties under contract and say, let me see if I can get it zoned. Let me file an application and I'll buy the property once I get it zoned. Matt purchased the property. They purchased it back in 2020. So they are very much committed to the success of what occurs on that site. They're not kind of a fly-by-night group that gambles on, can I get the zoning or not? They have a strong presence across Southwest Florida. We've worked on many, many different subdivisions with them, very high quality. And so it's nice to be able to call my client, and he's not only, the developer, but the decision maker and owner of the property. So that's important. So I mentioned we're part in the county and we're part in the city. So the city is shown in orange. Of course, your community is within the city. And then the majority of what's in the county is on the east side of the site. Again, that mining parcel that's kind of an upside down L shape. And then we have some county lands on the west side of the site. At a certain point in time, around 2008, is when the orange part was pulled into the city of Bonita Springs. It was annexed into the city out of Lee County. And the intent was to eventually develop the site, as is common for an annexation process. You want to develop with urban levels of development because you're within a city. So that was the intent at the time, but it was purchased, I believe, at some point around that time by Don Malinick, who's a gentleman that lives in Quail West, and he was very content to ride his horses on the property. So he didn't have any intent to develop that property imminently, and just used the property for his own kind of recreational personal purposes for many years until he was ready to sell it, and Seagate entered the picture. And so this is kind of a lot of the crux of the conversations we've been having is we're partially within the county. We have the ability to go for at least those lands within the county and apply for development permits. And we would be reviewed by Lee County staff. we would be reviewed against the Lee County Land Development Code and the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. The orange areas are within the city, and we could proceed, which we have, to be reviewed under the city's guidelines. When we embarked upon this process back again 5 years ago, we said this property fronts on Bonita Beach Road. It's served by Bonita Springs Utilities. It fits with the communities to the south side of the road. This really should be reviewed as a Bonita Springs project. This project is going to impact Bonita Springs schools, Bonita Springs Fire Station. We shouldn't try to permit it in Lee County. This is a city project. It only makes sense to give the city control of the entire 204 acres. So we applied to bring the gray areas into the city so that all 204 acres would be within the city of Bonita Springs. And we filed those applications. And we also filed a comprehensive plan and a zoning change to allow for development of the property. Back when this started, Matt had partners with Barron Collier companies, and they were seeking 588 dwelling units, a mix of multifamily, single family, as well as commercial. What we're here before you today is with a much reduced development program of only 299 homes, the vast majority of those being single family detached, much like your community, as well as a commercial component that we'll walk you through today. But just wanted to give you some of that context that we have the opportunity to move forward with a part of the project in Lee County. We could also ask the city to leave the city and take the orange into Lee County, or we can stay the path, which is what we're trying to do, which is let's stay the path, let's stay in the city of Bonita Springs, let's file a better application, let's work with the community, answer more questions than I think we were able to do last time, and try to make this the city project that it should be. And I'm going to move quickly because I've kind of covered this, this is not a scare tactic of, oh, it's, well, we're going to mine if we don't get these zoning approvals. I think that's what some people heard at earlier meetings. It's just simply a fact that the eastern side is an approved mine where we can do blasting and remove that either dirt or lime rock to sell. Now that's, again, Seagate's owned this for 5 years. They actually own a mining company. They have never attempted to utilize the resources on this property for mining. They've always said this deserves to be a world-class community that's an extension of the beautiful communities on Bonita Beach Road. So they have, even though there's a lot of development that could use that dirt, they have not gone down that path. This is another, I think, really important slide for everybody to understand, because I think everyone's really in this, I'll call it the hangover phase. We're in the hangover of all this growth and development that's occurred. I think it kind of ramped up after the recession for those of you who lived in Florida since around 2005. Right before that recession, we were just gangbusters. A lot of these communities were built at that time, and then development kind of stopped because of the mortgage crisis and all of those things. And then slowly but surely, Florida's paradise, everyone started moving back. And it was, I would say, from my perspective as a consultant who works on all these projects since 2005, it was pretty steady, but we were doing new developments. You could see them being built, but nothing too wild and crazy. And then I think it was somewhere around right before COVID, and then certainly right after COVID, I mean, we exploded. It was, everyone wanted to get out of New York, wherever they were. They were said, I need a place where I can have outdoor living and a little bit more freedom to move around. And Florida got a lot of growth. And so now we're in the state where even people who admittedly kind of recently moved here from somewhere else go, all right, I know I came in and I moved to Florida, but I didn't expect another 10,000 people a day to be behind me. And that's what I think, that's actually not inaccurate. It's probably a little bit of an overstatement, but there's a lot of growth that's still occurring here. So how does this tie to the slide on the screen? The good news is this is the last segment of Bonita Beach Road that really can be developed. You've got development at the gas station. You've got Pulte homes going in. You've got an RV park, a farm worker housing. Those may be redeveloped over time, but That's really the only private or privately owned lands on the north side of Bonita Beach Road. The south side is 100% developed with communities like this. All that green is publicly owned conservation land. So that is land owned by either Lee County, but more so the South Florida Water Management District or state, as well as some federal lands. And that makes up a lot of that crew preserve there to the east of the city. And so the good news for you all is while there's still an unknown of that area that we're talking about in question on the north side of the road, the vast majority will stay as it is, will be undeveloped in perpetuity. And that's because it's owned outright by the government and there's a conservation easement over that property that says it cannot be developed. So I think that's important that you can rely on that long term, that you're very well protected from a public land ownership standpoint. So again, we're kind of focused on this area and wanting to fill in this area with something that you can agree balances the needs of the property owner, but also balances with what you want to see as property owners that live in this area. And I'll note this chunk of land is to the west of us, to Bonita Grande, is all within Lee County. So we're the only parcel on the north side of Bonita Beach Road that's within the city. Everything else is controlled by the Lee County Code, the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. And what's been approved by Lee County has been the racetrack gas station, Pulte Homes, which is a density of 14 units per acre. They are townhomes. You see them going up, so that's not a mystery. But again, 14 dwelling units. I think about 154 units, if I'm correct. And then they're reviewing a commercial development just immediately east of that. Then we have the farm worker housing also within Lee County and the Sanctuary RV Resort in Lee County. And then it's us. So we're kind of the end of the line. And again, trying to have a project that meets with the expectations of the city in order to avoid having to file in two different jurisdictions. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to develop a predominantly residential community by, again, Seagate, who has just a wonderful portfolio of projects across Southwest Florida. I don't think anyone would disagree that these are some of the premier communities in Southwest Florida: Quail West, Esplanade Naples, Opus Stone, Talus Park. Palisades is a project we did in kind of central Naples. And then we have Hilltide Estates on Boca Grande. So this will be made available, I'm sure, through Megan and your board. And please research kind of the quality of development that they do to get a sense of what we're proposing. This next slide is our proposed master concept plan. It's an illustrative version of our concept plan. We do have 2 points of ingress egress from Bonita Beach Road. Those do line up with Palmyra's access points. So that has been a cause of concern. That is where the DOT would want them to be placed in order to avoid multiple driveways with competing turning movements. So that's where we have located them. I'll note the western access point that aligns with your main access point will have the lowest volumes of traffic. That's largely servicing just the west side of the project, which the yellow represents our single family detached home areas, which again is the majority of the lots. The purple area would allow coach home style of units or attached villas. There would not be any apartments or multiple story multifamily type development here. It would be single family and then some attached product in the purple. The orange on the east end of the site, what's labeled track C there, that is where we are proposing a commercial component, neighborhood scale commercial uses, no gas station, no car washes. We're looking at a small grocer, potential personal services such as beauty salon, nail salon. We talked about, potentially some of these fitness businesses are doing very well, but some folks said at the last meeting there was too much of that. But we've very carefully limited our schedule of uses to be neighborhood scale, nothing of an obtrusive size. We've got plenty of self-storage down by my office at Bonita Grande. I was shocked to see I think there's three there now. I can't imagine how they're doing well, but no self-storage, again, no car wash, no gas station or auto repair or any of those types of uses that are usually unsightly from the road and view shed. And speaking of that, you'll notice the dark green areas of the site. Those are preserve areas, either preserve or committed open space and buffers. And we're very proud that we are exceeding code requirements, 60% open space in total, whereas residential plan developments are typically required to provide 40% of the site as open space. The dark green is where it's going to be native vegetation, either in the form of wetlands or uplands. So the trees that you see on the roadways will largely remain. You can see along all of our frontage, it's going to remain that dark green color or preserve. And those widths, just in case you're curious, are about 200 feet wide. And then in the center area where it goes all the way up, that's about a quarter mile of straight preserve. So very expansive preserves. And the end point is when you're driving back home and you look to your left-hand side, you're going to see predominantly the same view shed you see today because that is where we have to put our preserve. And it will be under a permanent conservation easement that we dedicate to the South Florida Water Management District. So it's not only saying we're not going to develop it, but we're giving the district the keys to that to make sure it's not just our decision and we can't change our mind, that the district will be the entity that prevents it from ever being developed. So you don't have to take our word for it. The blue is water management lakes. We're taking advantage of the existing on-site lakes and adding additional lakes for water management. The idea there is that similar to how your community functions, the stormwater will be directed to those lakes, collected. We store the water, and that allows any phosphorus nitrates, stuff from the golf courses. Not that we're going to have a golf course, but treatment of grass gets settled into the bottom of the lake, and the water is cleaned through that process. So the goal is to really hold the water for a long time and then slowly release it off the site. We are going to release our water. We're required to release our water to the north, to the Kiel Canal. So we will not be releasing any water south to Bonita Beach Road. So that's also an important point because I know from just working down the street that in Irma, there was significant flooding in the area. So our water is going to be directed to the north. You'll notice along the top of the screen, it's just a thick green line. That's over 100 feet of just green space, open space for any overflow water that may occur so that it's not going to, run across pavement immediately. It'll get caught and hopefully percolate through the grass. And another key aspect of our request is that we've committed to maintaining the Kiel Canal along the entirety of our border. That is a water management district facility. So you rely on the state to go in and clean out, if branches and debris get caught, we rely on the state to do that function. And that was what they discovered from the flooding in Irma, is that a lot of these canals, waterways, even some of the rivers were not being cleared of debris as they should be, because the state has limited resources and they have got a lot of things to fix constantly. And so by allowing the private sector to come in and say, hey, we'll take this off your plate and we'll make sure this section is clear so that we're not impeding floodwaters and that it will help make that whole system function better. We will have, in that orange area where there's not preserve, we will have a 15-foot wide buffer, which would be hedges as well as trees similar to the buffer you have along your frontage. The big pink area on that lake is a very sizable, I believe it's about 8 acres, and it's a private recreational amenity, similar to what you guys enjoy here, where we would have our clubhouse, pool, sports courts, things of that nature that you would want with a high-end community. We do anticipate gating both entrances as well. So when we came back at this a second time around, we said, we have to give more information. We've got to be able to tell the story and not just have these two-dimensional drawings. So we wanted to show you all what this commercial piece of the project could look like. This is the kind of the architectural style Seagate has in mind for the project, and you can see our required buffering and seating areas to provide that commercial area. You'll notice this is not big box. These are smaller buildings ranging in size from about 5,000 square feet up to our largest being the proposed grocery store footprint at about 30,000 square foot. So we're not proposing large commercial uses like you'd see at the public shopping center. That is one large plaza that we would not be proposing here. This is a view of the grocery area. And let me just, if I can, because this was so there was a question in our meeting of where is that view being taken from? And just so you know, the second view I'm about to show you, you'd be standing on the entrance road. It's not from Bonita Beach Road. It's from if you were turned into our project and we're driving up. I hope that makes sense. But so if this viewpoint shows you're already in the community. If you were on Bonita Beach Road, you wouldn't see this because we've got that big 150-foot preserve area along that property line. So I just want to, Yuri's going to briefly touch on traffic here before we open it to questions, but I want to touch on a couple of additional commitments that we've made. No car wash, no gas station, no mini warehouse. We will permit and design the commercial uses at the first phase of development. So we're not going to build buildings if there's no demand for the commercial. That's our intent, but we will just reserve that area. It's not allowed to be residential. It'll just sit until the market wants commercial there. I think the city certainly has made it clear to us that there's a lot of homes east of here on Bonita Beach Road, and they do feel long-term some commercials needed so that people aren't driving all the way to the interstate. So they've been very clear with us on that, but our kind of pushback, if you will, is let's not build it until the market's ready for it. And that may be a while with Midtown coming out of the ground. It may take a while until a commercial use wants to come to the site, but in the meantime, it will remain undeveloped and it won't be used for anything else. We've also agreed to reserve some parking spaces so people can park. And if you're a bicyclist, maybe you can cycle along Bonita Beach Road, or if you're a hiker, you can use the sidewalk to get over to the Flint Pen Strand hiking trails. I mentioned our Keel Canal maintenance and the design of open space. And I think this is a pretty polarizing topic, but the city did ask us to consider not constructing a cell tower, but reserving a piece on an area on the site that could accommodate the smallest kind of structure, which is called a monopole. Not, the big giant towers, but it's a 150-foot tall pole is the typical height of those. But again, not building it. Seagate is not a wireless communications developer, but having the area reserved if it's needed in the future. So there is a large cell tower to the north of this site. I think it's on Tower Road, aptly named. So we would think that would serve the needs, but we do also hear that cell phone service is an issue. So we would reserve it there for the time being. This is just the stormwater management diagram. I just threw this in here just so it was abundantly clear we're not sending our water to you all, or to Bonita Beach Road rather. We're going to direct it north. And this is the actual design from our engineer. We do have an environmental resource permit, which is the water management district permit from the state water management district. So they've reviewed all of our calculations. I usually don't have that permit at the time of zoning. That usually comes after, because it is a very expensive permit to get because you've got to do all the detailed designs. But Seagate did go ahead and get that permit so that all the environmental and water management aspects have been thoroughly reviewed at the state level. I'm going to turn it over to Yuri to talk about transportation.
Thank you, Alexis. Good afternoon. I'm Yuri Baika with TR Transportation Consultants. I'm the traffic consultant who prepared a traffic impact statement for this project. I will briefly go over some of the traffic slides that hopefully answer some of your questions and concerns. just close this up.
So other meetings. Thank you for.
This was more important. So the first important point we want to mention is we reduced our unit count originally from 388 units down to 299 units since our last LPA meeting with the city of Bonita Springs. So in terms of traffic reduction from the residential point of view, that has been reduced significantly. And even more so when you compare to our original request, that was for 588 dwelling units. In terms of access, as we previously showed on our previous slides, we will have access to Bonita Beach Road directly via 2 connections. And that's done in order to spread out the trips between the driveways. And that's done in order to, so that all the trips are not concentrated in one location. So that's where there's 2 driveways, so the traffic can be spread out more between the projects. And again, as Alexis previously mentioned, our easternmost driveway, that'll be our main access to the project that will have the most traffic. We also increased the neighborhood commercial uses. That was done in order to reduce the vehicles from traveling farther west on Bonita Beach Road. So as part of our commercial project that we're providing, it is in order to serve the surrounding residential needs, providing closer goods and services to not only the future residents of our community, but also to you guys. That way, it avoids from public have to or forcing to travel farther west to I-75 or west of I-75 to get their commercial needs. And what that does, that it decreases the vehicles miles traveled on the roadways by providing this, again, closer commercial needs to the surrounding residents. We also prepared a traffic impact statement for our project. Before we started our traffic study, we met with the city of Bonita Springs and their traffic reviewer and conducted what's called the methodology. Basically, at that meeting, we agreed on what a traffic study needs to entail. Our traffic study was completed consistent with the city's traffic study guidelines for rezoning and comprehensive plan amendment applications. And the results of our traffic study indicated that there is sufficient capacity to support this project on Bonita Beach Road. Yes, and when we do our traffic analysis, we look at peak season conditions. So we take traffic data that's available to us through the city of Bonita Springs, and that data that they collect is during peak season. So I know we did the traffic study in April of 2025, but we made sure that we use the peak season data that's provided to us again by Bonita Springs. So our traffic study was done during peak season conditions. Just wanted to emphasize that. And again, we will do another traffic impact statement as we go through a process that's called development order process. Again, at this time, we're still in rezoning process and comprehensive plan amendments. Should that be approved, the next step will be to go through a development order process. At that time, we will prepare a very detailed traffic analysis that will look at site-related improvements, any turn lane improvements that will need to be done, signalization, etc. At this time, that's not a requirement of the traffic impact statement that's required to be done at this point in time. And if there are any improvements that will be required by this project along our driveways, that will be completely funded by the developer on top of the 5 million road impact fees that we're required to pay, which are collected by the local jurisdictions to help fix local roadways in the area. And the next project I'll briefly go over is the I-75 widening project from Golden Gate Parkway to Corkscrew Road. I know some of you are wondering, well, what does that have to do with our project? Well, a lot of the delays that you see today on Bonita Beach Road are due to the congestion that happens along the I-75 corridor. All that morning commute traffic during the peak hours, there's a lot of congestion that happens along I-75, and as a result, it's hard for people from Bonita Beach Road to get on and off I-75 interchange. So this improvement that's being done by FDOT, or Florida Department of Transportation, is fully funded and is expected to reduce the travel times along the surrounding corridors, which includes Bonita Beach Road. So in summary, it's they're widening from Golden Gate Parkway to Corkscrew Road from 6 lanes to 8 lanes. Again, it's a fully funded project and it's be done in multiple phases. And I believe the first phase is anticipated to start somewhere in late 2026 or early 2027. And this slide just kind of summarizes in green the segment that's being widened. North is to your right. And these are some of the typical cross sections that they'll be doing at each segment. So from Immokalee Road up to Corkscrew Road to the north, they'll be widening from 6 lanes to what appears 10 lanes. But it's going to be technically still 8 lanes. The reason there's 2 additional lanes in this concept plan is because they're going to be including what's called auxiliary lanes. Those are the lanes that you see that help you safely get on and off the highway between the interchanges and between the exit points. So that's why it might appear that there's 10 lanes, but realistically, it's still going to be 8-lane highway. And this is kind of the timing of the I-75 improvement project. In light blue, you will see the first section that's anticipated to be widened. It's going to be from Immokalee Road to just south of Bonita Beach Road, and that's anticipated to start for construction in 2027. Then the next segment is the one in yellow, is just from south of Bonita Beach Road up to Corkscrew Road, and that's anticipated to start in 2029. And then the last segments are more southern in Collier County, and those are anticipated to start sometime in 2030 and 2031. And the importance here is, as you see, the segments that they're doing first are nearby the Bonita Beach Road interchange. So those improvements will be done pretty soon. And it's not like our project is to be built tomorrow. We still have to go through a public hearing process. We still have to go through the development order process. So there'll be some time before you see any vertical construction start on our property. So in terms of timing, the timing of our project will, I believe the soonest homes that will be built are around summer 2028, and that will kind of closely correlate with the timeline that the FGOT is doing their widening project on. If you're interested, I'm not gonna talk more about this project, but if you're interested in hearing more about what FDOT is doing, they are holding a public hearing on August 14th at North Collier Regional Park. So if you're interested, you have any more questions regarding what they're doing or any updated timelines, I would suggest to really go to that meeting. And I see there's a gentleman taking a picture. Oh,
I just-
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Yuri. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. In terms of next steps and then tying it to some of the information you just got, we refiled with the city. So we got to a hearing in August of last year on our comprehensive plan amendment, and we got turned down and the project stopped. And we had to really consider, do we try to file in Lee County? Do we try to file again in the city of Bonita Springs? What are our options here? Because I own the property. I can't just walk away from this at this point. And so we, after a lot of consideration, Matt engaged us all to refile the application, make changes to our conditions, make changes to the plan. We met with staff on the addition of the commercial. One thing I didn't note is because of the commercial, we would be required to install a traffic signal at that eastern entrance, aligning with San Remo and Mattioti View. So that's a pretty significant change that gets, I think everyone feels a lot more comfortable if they have a traffic signal, gives them more options to safely get on the road. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that much earlier in our presentation. So we're at this zoning stage again. We hope to go to public hearings this summer or fall, and go back through that process, make our presentation. There is, newly elected members of council that represent this area very well, that have been very engaged in the process. So we hope to hit those hearings. Then we have to file our construction plans with the city, where they review all the details, a very detailed site plan compared to what you saw on the screen. And that takes about 6 to 8 months. Then we would start with, we have our water management district permit. So the state said, go ahead, you're good to move forward. So then we would start clearing the portions of the site that aren't going to be preserved. The preserve stays. The rest of the site, we would start putting in the roadways. You put the utilities, you dig the lakes, you do all that first, and then you start building home sites. So what this shows you, pretty easier than I've said it, is that by the time someone's actually putting their toothbrush in a bathroom in this project, I-75 will be widened. It will be, or very close to being widened. And we know that's not the only solution. We know you've got people going up Logan to Bonita Beach Road. It's coming at you from all angles. So it's not just I-75. It's not a magic wand, but we're going to give the city over $5 million towards roadway improvements. We're going to put in a traffic signal. We're going to put in turn lanes. And then as a traveler on Bonita Beach Road every day, I really think getting the 8th, 9th, and 10th lanes on the roadway will help get people off Bonita Beach Road onto the interstate. You all are headed for supper, and I'm trying to get on I-75, and I'm keeping you from getting to supper because we've got all the lanes blocked because no one can merge onto I-75 because it's a chokehold. So I really do think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. It's not everything, and we're going to pay our share of all the other pieces as well. And we hope you see the benefits of what is lower density. This is 1.4 units per acre compared to the 14 units per acre in the Pulte project. And we hope we can get some of your support, answer your questions if nothing else. And thank you for being so patient because I think we spoke longer than we planned. But we'll do from the floor first and then Zoom. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. I was going to repeat it, but. That density is taking into account all 204 acres. Yes. Yes, that's a good question. I don't have, and that's a good technical planning question because we call it gross density is just, I got 204 acres and 299 units. You do simple division, you get 1.4 units per acre. The net, because we have so much open space, our net would be much higher number. We're kind of being, I don't want to say punished, but the net density looks a lot worse because we've dedicated 60% of the site to open space. 55% of that open space is preserved. It's just straight trees that are going to be retained. So in terms of the lot sizes, I believe our minimum lot size is either 40 to 50 feet to give flexibility. This is intended to be higher end homes. So we set our setbacks at the minimum, and then you typically build larger. I will note that we're from Bonita Beach Road, the closest unit will be over 150 feet away. So I would submit to you, it will not, you might see a rooftop, but you certainly would not see a home from Bonita Beach Road from in this community. And then you can see along the edges, we have anywhere from 30 to 50 feet of setbacks from the east and western sides, and then or at least 100 foot from the Kiel Canal. Yes, we will have, the question was, will we have single and two-story homes? We will have both single-story and two-story homes. this man has the mic.
Will the residents about crossing Beach Road with low?
There will be full turning movements, so they will be able to make a right or a left out at the median opening. They will be able to make a left out to go east onto Bonita Beach Road. Again, the eastern access would be a signalized where there would be left-hand turn lanes and things of that nature. In the case of the westernmost, it would be using that median opening.
Alexis, what's the estimated incremental tax revenue to Bonita Springs from these homes? And has Bonita Springs given you any indication of how that money might be used?
Matt Price, are you still there? And do you remember the tax increase? I guess Jim knows it's 600. I thought it was more than that. Matt, are you on? Matt, you're muted. Are you forced to be muted? Okay, let's unmute you. Oh, Megan's gonna go unmute you. And I bet he's been going bonkers because he is so passionate about this project. And we've had him on mute for an hour. He's gonna fire me probably now. I hope not, but oh boy. Okay, we're
All right.
righty.
No, I won't. I may because I'm up here in Lake George on vacation with the family, so this is a nice little break. So why don't we instead of because that number is going to move a little bit, obviously depending on the number of units. We have the commercial units and how much commercial we have. So why don't we put for the public together, Alexis, kind of some numbers, and we can send those out so we have the same numbers and we're not using different numbers based on some of the changes that have been made in the plan. I just don't want to state a number and then it be $5 off. And believe you me, I've been called on that before. So why don't we just get a number and we'll send it to everybody after the meeting.
All right, I'm going to repeat that because I know the folks in the room are not able to hear as well, even with my mic up to the speaker. But so what Matt said is we've definitely run those calculations, but what we'd like to do is we don't want to, we know a lot of people are watching on Zoom. We don't want to give any misinformation. So, and we've got a great line of communication with Mr. Lucas. So we will, we've been sending out updates after the meeting. We'll send the calculation of that tax base increase. And it's a great question. And we appreciate you asking that because I think this keeps those tax dollars in Bonita Springs to support our city. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
to confirm, Alexis, the part of this process, because I don't know if everyone really understands it, but we are going to be bringing Lee County, all the Lee County ground into Bonita. So all the tax revenue for the project would go to Bonita Springs if we were successful.
That's a good point. And just to reiterate, our filing, what we've moved forward with is to bring all of the land into the city. We have not tried to file anything with the county. Even after the city turned us down, we said, let's try this one more time. We can do better. And so we're proposing to bring all the property into the city, and all of the property would generate additional tax base. I think Megan's in control of, yeah.
I have two questions.
Okay.
On your plot plan, can you point out where the land is being reserved for the cell site?
Great question. Can you all see my arrow? We proposed a 50 by 50 foot square at the very north end of the commercial tract, which is about 1,000 feet from Bonita Beach Road. And so that tower, if it gets built, would be screened by 150 feet of trees, and then multiple commercial buildings would also obstruct views. So we have not done a line of sight, which we can do that exercise. You might see the top of that from that distance away, but the farther away you move, the less visible it'll be.
The other question is, and I apologize in advance because I don't remember the exact terminology, but this is
was originally this property had some kind of covenant on it where it was about a discharge or some, yeah, do you know what I'm talking about? And you haven't spoke about that. Is that gone away or is that part of your application to get approval for this? And then the follow-up to that is if you get approval, does that open the door for all these other properties to be developed? Because they all have the same designation as what this property has.
That's a great question. You're referring to, the comprehensive plan category called density reduction groundwater recharge. So that is a designation in the Lee County as well as the City of Bonita Springs comprehensive plan. The green on this screen is publicly owned land under conservation easement. So the conversion of this property out of what we call DRGR does not impact the green lands remaining government owned and under a conservation easement. This property's never been under a conservation easement, but it has been within the density reduction groundwater recharge. A fun fact is everything south of Bonita Beach Road was DRGR. Per the 1990 first adopted Lee County Lee plan. So it's been modified over the years. You have to provide reports this thick to show that your project is actually improving groundwater as opposed to eliminating or decreasing groundwater. So we have done that report as part of our application. This is the only property in the city of Bonita Springs that directly abuts Bonita Beach Road that is in DRGR. The city does have other DRGR property way up Terry, Bonita Grande or Bonita Grand. They do have some DRGR lands. We understand the city really wants to protect that area. And we have taken great lengths in our application to show just because you approve this project doesn't mean it opens the door wide open to convert those lands up north out of DRGR. And so what do I mean by that? They're not on an arterial roadway like Bonita Beach Road. They're on little local roads that are substandard and flood and all these things. They don't have Bonita Springs Utilities water and sewer running directly along their property. They don't have a fire station right next door. So we believe our location and the infrastructure immediately abutting our property that it makes us different, and we've really made that point because we understand we don't want it any more of the domino effect elsewhere in the city. But I want to make sure everyone's comfortable that the green is not, it might be technically DRGR, but what's protecting that area is conservation easement and government ownership.
Alexis, most of the communities up and down Bonita Beach Road are retirement communities. We've got one right behind us here, Stone Creek, which is actually Collier County, which is very affluent. It's all working families. What is the target market for this development? Is this envisioned to be a retired orientation, or will it be working families with children as well?
Matt, do you want to answer that?
I mean, it's really tough to picture that, but chances are with the price point and the what's going on in Southwest Florida, I would assume that probably most will be second homes for people. But that's not to say that you wouldn't have some people, families, etc., in here. Again, it's really tough to say. And I've built communities before where, 3 years before we thought it was going to be one thing and it turned into something else. So demographics change, needs change. We're bringing a lot more younger families in here that work. A lot remote happened during COVID, where we had people that moved from the Northeast, the Midwest, down and run their companies remotely now. So it is tough to say, but I would probably picture if I was betting, probably more second homes in here.
So what Matt said is the price point, which will be north of $1 million, certainly for a project like this, which is really Seagate developed some of the last remaining parts of Quail West, and they see this as a replacement project for that now that they've sold out of Quail West. So at the price point, predominantly, in market facts are that's typically an affluent retired person who uses this as their second home. So that's anecdotal though. What he also noted is we're starting to attract CEO types. We're starting to attract working folks from the Northeast that want to get their family out of the Northeast. And so we are attracting some people that maintain jobs in New York City, but get to live, work, and raise their family in Southwest Florida that do have the ability to purchase in these types of communities. So you may have seen a slight uptick in families, but you know, I think the resident here is really similar to what you see in Palmyra and Worthington, where it's second homes. This lady in the back.
You mentioned that the commercial would be developed as needed. How does that impact the placement of the traffic light?
The traffic light would not, unfortunately, you're not allowed to just go put up a traffic light. We would have a lot more traffic lights around town if it was just a function of I want one and I can pay for it, because they are about north of $1 million, right? Okay. They've gotten a lot more expensive in recent years. And so you have to have what's called warrants, meaning you have to have enough trips moving out of the project to warrant the light. And so based on Yuri's analysis, if it's residential only for a number of years, we would not be able to get a permit to develop that signal. So it would stay 299 homes only without any commercial, without the signal until the commercial tripped it. Yeah, good question though. Yes, sir.
With the approval of your project across Needham Beach Road, would that have any impact on the future of the now vacant lot? And directly in front of Palmyra, on our side of the street?
On the south side of the street?
Yes.
No, I mean, the short answer is no. I don't know that it would provide a viable frame. That our framework or our proposal only works if you have enough acres to do, you know, the water management and this, you know, 55% open space preserve and all these things. So if they tried to use if they tried to replicate us, they would end up having 2 acres to build on. And I can't do much with that. So, but I can look into that a little bit more. I wasn't even aware there was a site on the south side that was undeveloped, but.
And then the next question would be the access to that now vacant lot. Looks a little tricky to me, but what do I know? Would the approval of your project improve or would it affect in any way the access issues to that lot that's now vacant?
I'm going to see if I want to make sure I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to find I think this might be my best aerial. Are you talking about this? Where my point? Oh no. Did that happen? Okay.
Yes, the income is, you put the gatehouse, make a left, you make the left. Make a left, it's for the left.
Okay. And it's surrounded by Palmyra, right? So I know you guys don't consider that part of it. I think it's part of your plan development, so I can certainly work with Jim and get you guys a response on what it's zoned for. And what's allowed there, because I actually did the zoning that allowed the San Remo townhomes, because that was all supposed to be commercial within Palmyra. And they changed that around 2013. So, okay, I'll stop yakking. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to the slide where you had water management?
I would love to. I'm not sure. Megan, do you know why I lost?
Anyway, this is what it's zoned for,
Oh, 48 units. Okay.
up to 48 units. Commercial can be
Yeah, so this would not impact the zoning of that property, which it's zoned as part of the Palmyra RPD CPD.
Yeah.
This is not my equipment. Let's see if we can get it. Oh, it's weird. I didn't. I'm sorry, which slide did you want me to go to?
Water management.
Yeah, okay.
At the bottom of the slide, you have there are two arrows going both ways.
Yeah.
Right? What is that arrow? What do those arrows represent?
Thank you for asking that question. Those are ingress egress arrows. So that's for traffic coming in and out of the project. The red arrow is our control structure that releases the water off the site. That is the only place that water can leave our site.
Okay, so the ingress egress has nothing to do with water management.
Yes, sir, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. The average lot size, let me do. There's two answers to that question. There's what our zoning approval asks for is a minimum lot size, and then there's the actual developed lots. I can tell you, our lot sizes are the same as Palmyra's zoned lot sizes. However, the exact number I want to say is about 5,500 square feet. Typically 120 to 140 feet deep, and then 50 feet wide is the typical. But you will build
Alexis, that's
some.
all. Yeah, Alexis, the lot sizes are going to be market driven, and we'll come into that. But the most homes we can fit in there is 299 homes, and that would be a minimum lot sizes, and we're almost definitely not going to build minimum lot sizes probably on every single home. So, but it'll be market driven.
Yeah, Matt just wanted to clarify that the smallest lot we can build per zoning. This establishes the minimum for the community. What occurs, just like in Palmyra, is you want a variety of lot sizes for a variety of customers. So you're gonna have some much larger lots for more estate style homes. You're gonna have a mix that gets flatted out with the market. So it's a good question. That's it in person. Okay.
Alexis, real quickly on the cell tower, are you going to approach potential cell tower developers to let them know you've got space available, or are you gonna wait for them to knock on your door? Because cell service in this area really is not very good. And I'm just wondering if you're gonna reach out, or you're just gonna wait for Verizon to say, hey, you happen to have a 50 by 50 square foot lot where we can put on a pole tower.
Matt, do you want to address, are we going to market?
Yeah, I mean,
that?
I've had cell towers before. I've worked with an operator out in Cape Coral on a project. So, that's something that I'll get feedback from the community on, and a push from that. I can assure you, there's staff and a lot of people on council are focusing on that. So chances are we're probably going to make some calls. Now, there is an existing cell phone tower out there. I don't know what happens when I start talking to them and to users, and then that person finds out that I'm maybe trying to steal, and maybe they add some to their tower. So I don't know exactly how it's going to go. And the other interesting part about the cell tower game is there's been a lot less investment in cell towers lately from cell tower providers because of people are looking at the future, and they're looking at Wi-Fi calling, they're looking at satellite connections, etc. So again, market conditions will certainly push that, but two of the three partners of Seagate live in Quail West, and my father always yells at me. One of them's my father, and he always yells at me that he can never get cell service, and he always loses it when he's pulling into Quail West. So I can assure you that his focus is trying to figure out a way to get cell service out there too.
So Matt kind of outlined that, the council's been focused on, that's where we got the directive on the cell tower for public safety purposes. They wanted us to include this. So I think to that extent, we're gonna need to continue to keep those folks happy and potentially market the site. Matt also noted there's a large existing tower there that's, we believe is underutilized, and we think a great solution is probably more providers getting with that cell tower owner on Tower Road just north of us, just north of the Kiel Canal. So I think that our competition may spurn that owner to get their act together and maybe offer more sites and maybe solve the problem that way. Certainly from a home builder standpoint, it's not ideal to have that kind of facility in your community. We're placing it in as far away from the road as possible, as far away from people's views, and we'll certainly commit to doing whatever's needed. We're willing to make that, I won't say sacrifice, but make commitment to the project. And Matt noted something as well, that his father and business partner live in Quail West, so they're also very familiar with this area, and they struggle with cell service in Quail West, so we also know it firsthand to be a problem. I got a question on Zoom. What happens to the land that is currently set aside for mining? When the mining is complete, is the land available for development? I really appreciate questions that allow me to clarify and correct things that people may have heard. So while we do have zoning approval to mine the eastern portion of the site, maybe 20 acres more of mining, we are not intending to do that. We've never exercised that ability or move forward with any mining. If we mine, we're eliminating land we could put a beautiful home on. It's kind of penny wise, pound foolish, you might say, when you have a beautiful property like this. So there's no intent to complete that mining. The intent is to never have that mined ever and just build homes around that existing lake. They can be very beautiful water features. So I'm glad I got to clarify that. There was a good question. This came in, I think I've clarified it. Will there be a stoplight at the entrance? The commercial, once constructed, will trigger a traffic signal at the easternmost entry. Will there be a buffer along the road so the homes and businesses are not available from the road? I think I've covered that as well, that we have preserve screening all of our homes. So the closest home to Bonita Beach Road will be screened by over 150 feet of existing native vegetation. The commercial also, the eastern commercial area has the native vegetation out front, and that one commercial area will have a buffer with trees, canopy trees, as well as a hedgerow. What are the proposed selling prices to the single family homes and their square footages? Matt, I always defer that one to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be million plus and probably 3,000 plus square feet, maybe smaller in some cases, but that's just a starting point for discussion. Again, the market will dictate.
So the response was the proposed selling price is $1 million plus, and this minimum square footage, approximately 3,000 square feet. To get that type of price point, obviously you need a larger home. The next one, Yuri may need to assist with it. Did the traffic study indicate the very high traffic during the seasonal periods? And if so, did the study mandate the requirement for traffic signals at one or both entrances? I think the answer is yes. The city tells us this is the worst day or week of traffic this year. Here's the numbers you're going to run against. You're putting traffic on Bonita Beach Road on, call it March 5th or whatever day everybody's grandkids and family is down here. And so we don't decide what day that is. We don't get to go, oh, I think it was March 7th, or we get that information directly from the city so that it's done properly. Because if we got to choose how to make the sausage, as they say, I think you could come out with a million different outcomes of these studies. So no, that data is fed to us from the city based on traffic counts at the worst possible seasonal period. the traffic, we don't have to do a full signal warrant analysis until the development order stage. Often it's the case with Palmyra, you get zoned a number of units. You don't always build all the units, or you can get zoned a certain amount of commercial and you don't always build it. So when you go in for a development order, meaning I really intend to build exactly this, that's when they do the traffic signal warrant. However, we did look at that analysis because we knew it was important to people. We couldn't go back without answers to that. So when you bring in the commercial square footage, we do trip the need for a signal at the eastern entrance. We do not ever trip a need for a signal, even considering all your traffic. It doesn't warrant a signal at that western access point. Okay. What is the composition of the land for development? I was under the impression it consisted of a large amount of wetlands, has this passed through review by the EPA, thank you, and have they approved it? So again, we're preserving the highest quality wetlands as well as some uplands on the site that total 55% of the property. There are some low quality wetland areas, meaning they're infested with Brazilian pepper or Melaleuca. So there's some really nasty species that if a property is not, Palmyra, you have beautiful preserve areas and they're maintained by your HOA. They're maintained, and once you get a couple of Brazilian peppers, you get them out of there so they don't overtake it. On a property that's just vacant, those species in a low quality wetland environment will overtake native vegetation. Those are the only areas that we have been permitted to impact. And yes, it's not the EPA that does wetland permitting. It's the Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District. And you may have heard there's a lot going on where they're changing who reviews what, where, but in general, there's a state agency as well as the Army Corps of Engineers that review our wetlands. They decide, are they able to be impacted? And they issue a permit once they've done that analysis. And we do have that permit from those agencies. So we passed that test. Will you be putting in sidewalks along the roadway? Yes, we are required to do internal sidewalks, and we are required to, we're actually there's a sidewalk in front of the property on Bonita Beach Road. It wasn't built wide enough by the county. It's because, again, I didn't emphasize this enough. The city's code is much higher standard than Lee County in a lot of regards. Water management, for example, I would say sidewalks as well. The city requires big multi-use paths. So they said, don't rip up the sidewalk, but give us a check, because when we're ready, we're going to redo that whole sidewalk corridor with a proper sized path where you can bike and walk and not be on top of each other or causing conflict. So yes, internal sidewalks, and yes, we'll be giving money for the external sidewalks. Why do you say the busy entrance will be the east when the diagram shows more homes close to the west entrance across from our main entrance? I'm not sure if I can answer that yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll answer that because the east entrance has all our commercial. So, and commercial generates much more daily traffic than residential. So that's the reason. That's why there's more traffic on the east side.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, and this, I think we've covered it, but we do have those two areas of commercial on each side of the eastern access road. The far eastern has preserve in front of it, a significant, again, 150 feet of preserve shielding those buildings. The western commercial tract we'll have to install a buffer. So we'll have to install trees and a hedgerow, so you're not looking at views of parking lots along that roadway. The area is residential, and it would be our hope there would be full screening from the road to fit into the local area. Yes. And they also said the sound is garbled. I hope it's gotten better. I guess they were having a hard time hearing some of the questions in the room. So hopefully, how many max stories will the homes be? 2 stories is the maximum, I believe. We have asked for 45 feet for our coach home, but 35 feet is the the standard for single family, again, 1 and 2 stories. At a former meeting, there was talk of pushing back the additional commercial space on the west side of the east entrance that is mandated by the city further back from Bonita Beach Road, and maybe moving the east side further forward, but balance out the buffers. Right now, the west side has hardly any buffer from the road, so we will see the stores, I think is the concern. We are proposing to install a buffer that will screen that area. Also, the city of Bonita has commercial design standards requiring the front of the building to be interfacing with the street, so you can't have loading areas and dumpsters looking out on to Bonita Beach Road. It would have to be the entryways of the buildings.
Alexis, one other thing on that is there will be a buffer, even though it's not shown. The reason that there's a buffer shown on the east side is because that buffer is actually part of the wetlands and conservation point, but there will be a buffer on the west side. I think people should understand that.
Gary, I don't know if you want to answer this, but they're asking, do we really have to have our entrances aligning with Palmyra's? Is that a requirement?
Yeah, that's the standard practice in transportation planning, and that's what the county DOT will only approve. They want your entrances to line up with other entrances. That way to see if there's any, you do turn improvements at one location, and if there's any traffic signals warranted, you will do traffic signal at that location.
Here's another one to stay up here. Okay. So they're asking, does the need for the traffic light, is it influenced at all? Is it just what we're putting onto Bonita Beach Road, or can you take into account what's entering the roadway from Palmyra and San Remo?
So the need for a traffic signal warrants is basically driven by the highest traffic coming out of either entrance, either the south side or the north side. So when we look for the traffic signals, we look at the highest number of trips coming from the north side and the south side, and whichever one was the higher, that's the one that drives the warrants. And commercial in this scenario would definitely drive those warrants.
Yeah.
More so than the residential or the Palmyra project to the south.
But with someone coming out of the west entrance of your property, would that be right turn only towards 75? I'm guessing they could take a left.
Correct. Yeah.
Right turn.
I was wrong there. Okay. Thank you. Well, I guess, and you all have existed and been built out for a while, so you clearly have not tripped enough trips to install a signal. I think that kind of goes without saying. I think I'm at the bottom here. Is there any present intention to develop any industrial, or did the slide include the industrial piece to reflect permitted zoning only? That's a great question. We are not proposing any industrial. The eastern portion of the site is zoned industrial to allow mining, but we are not proposing any industrial uses. It would all be very limited neighborhood commercial. There was talk of changing the portion of the east and west commercial. Is that still being considered? I think this is kind of a repeat question of, we can certainly, I'm noting that you're looking at maybe how can we enhance the buffering on the portion of commercial that doesn't have preserve. So that's why these meetings are helpful. We can take feedback. I think that is coming through on multiple avenues that we should look at that. Signal lights should also take into account the existing high traffic levels on the road. I think Yuri answered that it generally does, but it's mostly who's entering the road, not necessarily who's already on it. Please address the question for two communities opposite each other. A few questions back regarding an experience at Treviso Bay, impossible to cross with no light, people going halfway. Well, as Yuri said, it would be a right out on the western, right in, right out. And then from the eastern is where we could make the left out or the right.
It's going to be a bottle.
Yeah, and that's something we'll review during the development order process when we'll meet with Lee County Department of Transportation. And they'll, at that time, we'll see if there's any safety issues, like you're saying. And if there are safety issues, then possibility might be closing that median opening completely or just having a right out for our project. But that will be all decided during the next step. And that will be all up to Lee County Department of Transportation because Bonita Beach Road is their roadway. So they make a decision.
Okay, I missed this one. A few months ago, I believe Bonita voted not to approve this project. What changes have you made since that no vote that you think this vote will be positive? We've understood from the city that additional commercial, they feel is a public benefit to this area. Again, limited commercial, not big box, not mini warehouse, not gas stations, but getting some goods and services to people. They do believe long-term is something very positive for the city. So reworking that commercial component is really a significant change. Adding reserving the space for a cell tower, again, for public safety. We did the public parking spaces for folks to access the pathway systems as well as to get to the crew lands. Those were the main changes, amending the schedule of uses to limit mini warehouse and take that out of the mix. So those were the key changes. We already had the 299 units. We did not modify that. We already had the 60% open space and the preserve, so those items weren't changed. So I think we got through the Zoom questions. And again, so we'll provide the presentation to Jim to circulate. I've written down about the commercial buffer to take a look at that. And then we're going to get back to you all on the tax base increase of the project based on what we're proposing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And I assume everyone on Zoom got this invite because they're on Jim's list. So look out for his follow-up email. Thank you.